Hello and welcome to Homestage's Folk Music and Poetry 2021 Roundup. I'm Florrie Crass. I head up the poetry side of things at Homestage.
And I'm Maddy Leedham, and I head up the folk music side of things. We're basically each other, but in different sections.
This is a real crossover episode, I feel.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone expected this, but here we are.
We've never been on screen together before, so this is
No.
just out of this world.
Never. I actually hadn't properly clicked that before. Yeah, never. This is a first.
Yeah, we do know each other.
Mm.
We've just not been on air.
Well, it's about time to change that.
Yes. So for the first half of today, we've got something a little different for you. We're going to recap the 2021 events, going through some of our highlights of the year. And then, Florrie, for the second half, what was our plan?
We have a lot of projects and programs coming up in 2022, and we thought it was a good time as we approach the new year to give you an idea of all the things that we've got lined up and everything that we're working on. So there's lots for you to look back on and lots for you to look forward to that we've got planned.
Certainly is. So, shall we start with going over Tuesday Folk People and Meet the Poet and just kind of recapping what that's been about? I'll begin with Tuesday Folk People. So for those of you who don't know, every Tuesday at 8 p.m, we journey into the passions, pastimes and studies from the folk circuit, showcasing a variety of different acts from all around the world. And so each week I interview a new artist and we have a chat, we hear their stories, we hear their music through exclusive performances and all that sort of thing. Now, just before we look at the recap, I did do a recap 6 months ago. So if you want to have a look at the first half of the year's artists, just go back, and it was on the 29th of June. So we're now going to look at the second half of the year's artists. So let's go and watch the people from the last 6 months.
If my eyes were blind, darkest night would never hold a mystery.
Oh, my poor old mother, she wrote to me, "Leave her, Johnny, leave her." She wrote to me to come home from sea, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her.
Cruel winter cuts through like the reaper, and the old year lies withered and slain.
When first you found me as dark as the night, bound up in granite, cold cassiterite, with quartz and with copper, with iron and lead, my brothers all round me lay dormant, not dead.
Who doesn't know what I'm talking about? Who's never left home? Who's never struck a
I let my grip upon the wheel, my knuckles white. I'm racing now, I'm getting home tonight. I'm hypnotized by the headlights flying by.
First came the rain, and it washed the crops away, and it left the empty glades. Start again. Then came the fire, and it filled the orange sky, and the flames that grew so high, it's got the plane.
There's a hole in my pocket, no tread on my shoes, and my coat is all crumpled and thin. But I'll buy you a dress all in ribbons and bows, just as soon as my boat cruises in.
It is this that gives my soul. Oh, I love its joy.
Motorway and sink estate, rich man in his rolling acres, poor man still outside the gate. Retail park and burger kingdom, prairie field and factory farm, run by men who think that England's only a place to park their car.
Raise a glass to progress, the gift that keeps on giving. Elevate your status, don't limit your ambition.
I think that you're perfect, just the way that you are. Think you're magnificent, from up close or from afar. So don't change your hair for me, you're in champion form. I think you're perfectly normal.
I lay on my back with the sun in my eyes. Soon I will know what no living man knows. All of my life's been a fight against lies. Death brings the truth and it's my turn to know. Between the moon and these wild words, betrayed in the overground by old waterways and these tall grey pines. Two friends go hunting side by side.
In the dark hours of the morning, my heart beats like a train. It comes on without warning, puts a jump beat to my brain. Short of breath, thoughts of death, but on that light to keep me sane. A little peace of mind is hard to find.
Maddy, you've had so many fantastic Tuesday Folk People guests. That's even just in the past 6 months. I hate to put you on the spot like this, but who were some of your favourite Tuesday Folk People guests to date?
You really are actually putting me on the spot. That's really unfair. So,
I'm sorry,
I don't know. It's really hard. They're literally, because it's difficult to judge because everyone's so different. And because folk is such like a big genre, the people that we get from like old time music in America to traditional unaccompanied singing here and stuff. And it's really tough. I have to say, if you were twisting my arm, Bob Fox is definitely up there just because just so interesting, and he kind of just gave such a history and just knew exactly what he was talking about, and obviously that just comes from all those years on the folk scene. Another one probably was John Doyle. Again, just very kind of insightful, made me really think about stuff, which takes a lot.
Is that one of the joys of Tuesday Folk People? And I mean, we'll come on to this, but Meet the Poet, which I run, is it that, you know, it gets you thinking. You come across so many people that you wouldn't have in day-to-day life, and loads of different genres, as you mentioned.
Yeah, 110%. Like, for example, Pam and Norbitowski, they introduced me to gypsy jazz and some like fusion of gypsy jazz and folk, which I just never even thought existed. And so them introducing that to me, now I feel like I know stuff about it. My knowledge has definitely broadened since starting these interviews. Do you find that with your Meet the Poet, that you just like know so much more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, quite a few of the guests who I've had are there have been a few creative writing lecturers who know exactly what they're talking about. And I mean, I've often asked questions where I ask them to define things and explain things. Like, even just for me, I'm sure there are people watching who don't know all of like poetry terminology and stuff, but I have loved learning things from these people. And even people who aren't, you know, lecturers, it's so much fun learning about these people's lives. And that's the whole point of this, is meeting so many different people and discovering their experiences and everything.
Yeah. Absolutely, it is. And I feel like we are in such a lucky position that we're the people who get to actually meet them and actually ask the questions. And I don't think that many people get that opportunity to meet so many amazing poets or musicians and actually speak to them, which is what we do. So we're very lucky. But I wanted to ask, put you on the spot now, send it back to you. Who would you say is or who have been your favourite poets from the year?
Favourite poets? Well, I mean, actually, maybe I should give a brief explanation of Meet the Poet too, because there might be some of your folk people who haven't seen my poetry events. So Meet the Poet is a regular poetry series which I run, and I bring poets from all across the country and across the world to share their work and answer some of my very nosy questions about their lives and their work. And yeah, I mean, it's also a Q&A thing. You know, you can drop comments and you can ask your questions if you want to be nosy too. But my favourite guests so far, I have to say, Genevieve Carver, who I had a couple of months ago, I really, really enjoyed her work. I mean, she's a fantastic poet, but she's also part of this gig theatre project called Genevieve Carver and the Unsung, where they do like a combination of music and poetry, and they perform it on stage. And they've had like amazing reviews and everything, and it's on really interesting topics. It's about women in the music industry. But the reason I really loved it is that like it was just a complete like breath of fresh air, having music brought into poetry, and it also sort of felt exactly like what we try to do at Home Stage, is, you know, bringing the different creative pursuits together. So she was fantastic. I mean, who else? I feel like I can't go around picking all of my favorites because they're all so. I've enjoyed everyone's work. There was also a duo. I had Anne Osborne and Heidi Williamson come on. They had a really interesting sort of set prepared about science and poetry. Anne's a scientist and Heidi is quite involved in science. And it was, again, like a really interesting overlap. So yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed that, finding the niches in poetry. But
yeah. I mean, there's such niches and you just don't even know that they're there. But like, I love that you've just mentioned the overlaps between the different kind of subjects and poetry. And I feel like that is something that we definitely have parallels in Tuesday Folk People. Like, for example, Brona McVitie, she kind of brings electronic music into her folk music. And there's all sorts. It's just all these overlapping things. And I think that just is what makes it so special, isn't it? It's just the fact that everything comes together to make these amazing fusions and amazing creations. And even, like you said, with Genevieve Carver, poetry and music blended together, obviously, that's us. That's what we're
doing. It's exactly what we're doing here. And it's one of those things, you know, we talk about it quite a lot, how much poetry and folk music are related. And in some ways, they're not related. They're their own separate things. But in other ways, they are so inherently connected. They're both sort of, they're storytelling, aren't they? Like, they're storytelling modes. So I do think they work well together. But I wonder if we should have a look at, this is now, you know, my turn to showcase some of the highlights from the past year. So this is a selection of the best moments of Meet the Poet from 2021.
My converted father rings in my ear. It's Morse at a 15 kilohertz pitch. I hope you're keeping a log, he advises. I catch his aside, but can't translate the message, can't tune into your station. I'll keep trying. I'm signalling from all over the world, he says. I got my license lifetimes ago. I still know bits of the code. We would test each other.
Sociologists claim our quality of life peaked in 1978, the year Archie Gemmill scored a World Cup goal for Scotland. Sony invented the Walkman. Superman was playing in cinemas. That summer, my parents went into a pub, ordered 2 pints. We don't serve pints to ladies, the barman said.
We try not to think of the cows, the empty churches of their chests. Their hearts are grey now, filmed and tubed, bigger than 2 fists, and the air smells like we've swallowed money, like we've licked the edge of a knife.
Fell in love the first time we danced. An uncoordinated, cack-handed avalanche. You bounced over on the balls of your fine feet and climbed on, staying put, as coy as a well-heeled, sassy lap dancer. My heart started drumming a repetitive beat.
As you fold the sheets, it reminds me of the great origami craze of 68, 69. Wherever you went, there were people folding squares into something or other, frogs that hopped when you tapped them with a pencil, lotuses that opened to reveal Shiva, delicately balanced and winking.
Acceptance sounds soft, curved and yielding, like weed tugged gently downriver, or the tawny flecks of wheat on the wind. And perhaps in the end it is so. But its process is violent. The rip and roar of a great bear tearing at your startled flesh.
Today I shared my favourite haiku with him. He listened, although poems aren't his thing. It's the one where the poet hears a cuckoo and longs for Kyoto, even though he's standing in Kyoto at the time. I spoke about the way, for me, the poem perfectly articulates the existential ache anyone who has a soul must recognise.
We're driving out into a starry, brittle night, heading for home at last. I'd been delayed, snowed up, missed my connections. You had stayed all day at the airport, meeting every flight, until I came. And there you were, just right, solid to the touch, a little disarrayed with waiting. A fortune's parking paid, we're on the road, with bed and sleep in sight.
If I hadn't swallowed the kettle, maybe I wouldn't have boiled myself dry. But I watched you every morning, dangling a reused tea bag over the cup, and something inside me broke. My wire is trailing over the toaster again, with that melted plastic smell.
Dad, now you're dead, you scare me. Every time I think about stepping into traffic, I think of you building your glass castle, corner shop whiskey bottle by corner shop whiskey bottle. I had to do one of those questionnaires recently. How many times in the last month has your drinking stopped you doing things you needed or wanted to do? I put 0, Dad. Proud nothing. They never ask about the times the drink makes living possible.
At the swamp, a songbird sits in the branches. A bullfrog down below the songbird sings their heart out. "What do you think?" says the songbird. The bullfrog only hiccups. "It was my best song," thinks the songbird. "I have to do something better." It digs up something deep inside it, holds the last note for over 5 minutes, and when it's over, they lean down to the bullfrog.
Hello, all of you, brilliant poets and poetry fans, such appetites, etc. I was thinking, tomorrow morning, how about you walk out of your jobs and those without jobs walk into them? Just up and toodaloo, just up and hello, nice to meet you. Take the staple gun, fantasize interiors. My name all of a sudden is, if you could redecorate one thing, my name all of a sudden is, I want to quit my job and start negotiating. I like my job. Take the coffee machine, that's going nowhere. Trellised rose wallpaper, take the water cooler. I'm so anti it, I can't put it into words. There's a kind of wave bye-bye that never really happens, that is just ongoing, like saying the whole time, the whole party, I need to go soon, I need to go soon, and people keep offering you stuff and telling you stories. We mime speech bubbles, we suck our thumbs.
The edge of town. A lantern lights the man about to die. His comrades clasp their eyes. He kneels. Arms spread like sails aloft, he wills defiance, but it's terror which obtains. The friar murmurs blessings, swears and damns the French. The waiting chorus moans and cries, then tire! Muskets fusillade. He spills beside the corpses slumped among the stains.
As I started to avoid some of those who knew the situation, and loneliness became an attractive destination, I found myself befriending not the sort of friends that we together would have made, but the sort of friends who come with the new role that I played, a role which held little interest for the friends we already knew.
Can you say that a man is lost just because you cannot distinguish him from the background? Cole Swenson. We go back quietly in surprising sunshine. The warmth opens us as our child sweats into the Scottish air, declaring the hill too long a mountain. He says the light tastes different here. It nestles on our tongues.
It was late September. I just put the little one to bed when he comes back from his Arctic trip, smelling of reindeer shit, blowing that damn bugle like there was no tomorrow. He throws his kit bag down on the table, puts his feet up, starts telling me stories of Jamotis, Kvitjik, Sorcerer, the Lap who tried to drink seawater. Oh, how they all laughed. I used to love those days in the summer when he would take me through the north gates, so to speak, and out into the meadows, feed me mead made from mountain honey.
He drew my attention to paper clips, their furtive encounters, their magic tricks. How does inanimate stuff like this secretly manage to shift and hitch? Necklaces left in a fastened box end up coiled in unravelable knots in a ménage à trois with a silver cross and dangly earrings or bracelet watch.
This was always a good place to get your heart broken and find a song to patch it. I don't say mend. Last ferry, last train, or under the salty tons of Mersey, in radio silence, neon on the windscreen, just sing, will you, and find someone to tell you worse things happened at sea.
I have set you here. On the way into the woods, do you feel someone turn the focus of the lens with the topmost parts of their forefinger and thumb in line with the crick of your neck as you turn to look but feel the head fixed straight? The branches tick. Someone set them going. The woods have set you here so as to feel away from thoughts, but still you think, I never really entered.
I turned the corner and spied a nice shell. I clamped onto the arm, pulled out the body, and crawled in. I heard the sea inside. I crawled along the beach. It was light and the shell was cracked. I went under a rock. I went under a rock. I went under a rock. I swapped vehicle for an empty shell. In the shell, the salt made me feel odd. The dark seaweed crackled. The air was empty and confusing. It was as though it was the wrong instrument. It might have been another storm. The guy from before was crawling around a pool. I crawled away from the dark seaweed. I crawled around the pool.
I am Nina Simone's anger. I am Etta James's veins. I am Annie DeFranco's middle finger. I am your little sister's bedroom door. I am the ripple in the pond. I am the rip in your jeans. I am wild and unwashed and broken. I am not taking it lying down. I am shit at lots of things. I am difficult. I am wrong. I am tied in knots. I'm free. I'm simply trying to be me. I am frightened. I am flawed, but I am here. And I'm not going anywhere.
about the dogs, she says. She sits and she isn't mother, but helpless nonetheless. A divorce is as much about leaving as it is about what you take with you, what you can carry, and it's the dog. They need homes. You can't leave dogs. It goes against the soul.
Spurning words that echoed like a curse, I stuffed a duffel bag with blister packs of pills, merry quant minis, fantasies of girls, threading daisies in the muzzles of guns, escaped to the big smoke. In a bedsit by Kensington Gardens, I massacred steak with a mallet of hate. A year on turned vegan, pioneer in 68 of pity for pool-eyed cows, sheep, slate stare, place, feigned compassion.
I wanted to learn this new trick, this act of dying that got everyone whispering, hushing over amongst themselves. So I watched her. Heard the shallow, quick breaths, watched her arms thinning till I fancied I could see the bleached frame of her bones. I expected her to shrink up, away into nothing, her skin to get so tight that her bones would powder up and her blood spill out, making her fizz and froth over the edges of the bed and down onto the scrubbed floor.
They were amazed at what they saw. A huge self-portrait of the artist dressed like a general, sitting proud on a mound of voluptuous cushions. Next to it was a work that really made them gasp. A work that had never been seen before, having been locked away in the temperature-controlled vault of the eremitic, now deceased patron of the arts. The painting was done in a characteristic style, impasto to the point of pastry. The usual mountains and rushing streams. But when they looked more carefully, a hidden landscape emerged in the dizzying folds of ultramarine.
The man at the head of the tube asks me to lift my arms, fold my shoulders back just so, or else how will I ever move on? Making a space for a body is just one of many confessions, like the best of your days is still to come, and the tube will help you see yourself properly for once, all the way through. Hurry up, chicken, it's time, he says. And I butterfly like I've been told to. A thin line of silver between us. I, large-hearted carrion. He, just a photographer, really, or so he says.
It was such a strange feeling, like being awake in half a dream. Walking from my local doctor's surgery, having been told that I no longer had a heart. The beat had faded, lungs had ceased. Just black tulips sleeping among the dust of a glimpse. And that iron temple that I once trusted had several cracks, which I left unrepaired when the holes started to grow.
I think of you going to the edge of nowhere, to the camp of 1 million homeless. The roads are red dust, lined with dripping green trees, but then the desert, stretching to the river. I hope you're safe as well as happy. There's nothing I can do about either. So far away and busy you cannot think of me and shouldn't try. We will visit next year. That's one more thing for you to worry about. Here, people are driving home from work. It's winter, so their headlights flash across the ceiling like searchlights in wartime when the bombers came. Where you are, out there in the middle of the world, light comes and goes the same time every day. Slow dawn, no dusk, quick, blindfold dark.
Well, yeah, dwindles and blows to December's a red jewel, my birth month. The sky blushes and lays its cheek on the sparkling fields and the dusk.
What an amazing selection. I mean, I feel like you've just left me wanting more of it, because the whole thing is the entire story of the poem, and you've given us just a little taster of each of your different poets, and it's like I want to know the end of the story. I want to know the whole bigger picture sort of thing.
You have to go and watch it.
Exactly, that's exactly what I'm going to do. But I wondered, how do you find, because obviously we've just seen like a bit of a timeline of the poets, or like a selection of them. How do you feel that Meet the Poet has evolved over the year?
Well, I mean, the format of it has changed quite a lot and quite regularly. We've alternated between having, 2 guests at a time, 1 guest at a time. Sometimes it's half an hour, sometimes it's an hour long. I'm really liking where we're at the moment, where we're sort of, I'm tending to bring one person in at a time, and we really get into like the nitty gritty of the poems. I hear one poem and we discuss it. I, ask my questions about specific words and the inspiration behind the poem, and yeah, we do that for maybe half an hour or so, and I think that works really, really well, because for people who don't know, we also run like Zoom discussion groups. So I have poetry discussion groups going throughout the week, and those are really special because it's a really nice small space to ask all the questions that you have about poetry, and like I said earlier, be nosy and explore. And I think that is one of the best things about poetry, is finding those tiny little things that you might have missed otherwise. If you spend enough time looking at the poem and discussing it and considering it, you can find some really interesting little nuggets in there. And the way that we do Meet the Poets now, I think, is bringing all the best parts of those discussion groups into these streamed events, where I can really, discuss the poetry with the poet and really get to grips with it. So that's, it's evolved quite a lot from sometimes we've done long readings and you really sort of get immersed in the work. And now we're sort of, getting into the finer details of it, I think, which is really fun. So yeah, that's how Meet the Poet has evolved throughout 2021. But how about Tuesday Folk People? Because it has changed quite a lot, actually.
It's very similar. We had that. We've done 2 acts, we've done short interviews, we've done long interviews. And as you said with Meet the Poet, I think I'm really liking where we are now, because we're doing the 1 act. And we did try, well, I tried to limit it to half an hour. But I find that it's this thing of like taking it slow and having the time. It really helps you understand the musician. And so we are taking like maybe an hour per person now, and I just can't help it. And I try to like cut it, but I just can't, because I find everything so interesting, and I really feel like I get to know the artist now really well.
I mean, isn't it funny how much when this began, obviously no one was like hugely used to using Zoom and all these like live streaming platforms, and I think we've really honed it in the period of time that we've been doing this, and hopefully, avoiding all the glitches that we can for streaming. I think we're at a good place now.
Absolutely. And I feel like maybe this is a point where we should do a shout out to the tech team who help us get through.
Yeah, so, I mean, for everyone at home, we have a fantastic tech team who are constantly helping us put all these programs together. I mean, how should we do this? We have our head of broadcasting, Paul Kenlin, who he's here to sort of monitor everything that goes on, make sure that we get the programs out and for you all to see them.
Yeah, he's there at the end of the phone when Florrie or I has a technical meltdown, and
which is quite often.
We're breaking down on the phone like, Paul, it's not working. And he just comes on in and fixes everything. Generally, we couldn't do it without him. And then we have our sound engineer, Mark Fawcett, who actually was a previous Tuesday Folk People guest, if anyone wants to go back and watch him sing. Amazing. And he helps us, makes us sound good, sorts out all our sound issues, microphone problems and stuff like that.
But so also useful. For something that this is a bit of I'm getting ahead of myself, but something we will be mentioning later on is the Homestage podcasts, which are going to be coming out. And Mark is the mastermind behind that, using all of his sound tech skills to piece together these events into podcasts that you can listen to. But we'll come to that. But that's
a bit later on. So basically, Florrie and I are literally just the face. Behind us, there's like this whole amazing team that does everything. And I should probably mention as well, if we're talking about Paul and Mark, James Wells, who really massively helps with liaising with the artists, finding the artists, and getting the people that you have on your screen each week. He's a crucial part of that. So big thank you to those three.
Yeah. Here is a selection of the highlights from our 2021 one-off folk music and poetry events.
I loved school. I absolutely loved it. But I was so far behind, and I had a tour booked for that November, and I knew that if I took my A-levels and failed, that I would have to resit and I'd have to cancel my tour, which was in the States, and I just thought, that.
Yeah.
When I was a little girl, I wished I was a boy. I tagged along behind the gang and wore my corduroys. Everybody said I only did it to annoy, but I was gonna be an engineer.
Say, many of the songs that I sing, we're not sure exactly. We can say when they first appeared in print, which might be anything from the 1600s to the last century, but how long they existed before that they have come down the mouths of our ancestors. So I'm just a thread in the link that connects history and thought and emotions and situations, which does make it different from other forms of music.
While away the extra time until the time to breed, and then they had the nerve to say, what would you like to be? I says, I'm gonna be an engineer. No, you only have to learn to be a lady. The duty isn't yours for to try and run the world. An engineer could never have a baby. Remember, dear, that you're a girl.
Her eyes, they shone like diamonds. I thought her the queen of the land. And her hair hung over her shoulders, tied up with a black velvet band.
But I think the interesting story about that song is that Harry isn't singing the Dubliners version. The Dubliners are singing Harry's version. Harry was recorded by Ewan MacColl, the great collector, singer and songwriter, probably best known now for writing First Time Ever I Saw Your Face. But he collected from Harry in the 50s and established a series of workshops for singers and folk musicians in London. And one of the people who attended that workshop was a guy called Luke Kelly. Luke Kelly went back to Ireland eventually after a couple of years and took with him Harry's arrangement, Harry's version of Black Velvet Band, put a group together, called it the Dubliners, and that became one of their trademark songs.
I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer by, and the wheels kick and the wind song, and the white sails shaking, and a grey mist on the sea's face, and a grey dawn breaking.
You I will write till I'm double, with age and a face for the grave. For you I would die on the double, for you are from where I came.
I'm an old woman named after my mother. My old man is another child that's grown old. If dreams were thunder, lightning were desire, this old house would have burned down such a long time ago. Make me an angel that flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo.
There is a corner of the city where the air is soft resin. Step in and it hardens around you, suspended in amber. We made the mistake of kissing there. Here. Our mouths midway across the same inhalation, like robbers mid-leap between rooftops. If kisses were scored by composers, they'd place the breath on the upbeat. Oh, God. Music preceded by mid-air. When the baton lifts, the orchestra tightens, and before the 1, 2, 3. And the sunlight is meticulous, and the river holds its tongue. And your silver earring steals like an aerialist's hoop, caught mid-spin, a note almost sung, locked in the amber of the and. We just want to land, or be landed on.
Not so many days since we're arriving. This grey is like Berlin. The same grey day we have. This northern weather and the damp street. A bit of rain won't hurt. Will help the trees on this Hampstead Heath we see, in fact. Why should I mind that? I drive with the buses. Herr Conductor asking me, for what? I don't exactly remember. Fast, please? To him, my penny I hand over. He nods with a kind smile. Thanks, love, he says. Oh, I am his love. Turns handle on machine, out curls the ticket. This is when I know that here to settle is okay. The city will be home. We're even on the bus.
And my brother and I were born 9 minutes apart. And so I wondered, what else could you do in 9 minutes other than give birth to identical twins? So this poem is the result. It's born 1954, 1:45, 1:54 p.m. In the time it might take to heat a pan of frozen peas or boil 2 eggs consecutively. For an aunt to cast on a doll's bonnet, considering the size of the firstborn, or rather lack of it. Time to register the shock, or microwave a chocolate cake. Make 9-minute Carolyn curried eggs, or undertake Chris and Heidi Powell's miracle workout. Alternatively, listen to Black Sabbath's God is Dead, or read Shakespeare's sonnets from the fairest creatures we desire increase to that on himself such murderous shame commits, or free fall 24 miles from space as Felix Baumgartner, which, after all, has equivalence to what the twins did.
Uanta tertium de bheithem a bhean, den tóir nó den neamhaird a dheantar orm, tertium den churgéal de rudaí de hir a glúdú, iriam terseach de scahain, de thuaille de thracaigh an tí, den siar lorg sa dorgadas, tertium de cléomháin íon, gen arún, gen annacht, terseach dem aig, dem a chud grúige, dem a ingene, dem a chim, is dem a gá chromáin héin. And Peter Fallon has done a wonderful job with the translation here, I feel. I'm very privileged to have been published by the Gallery Press also. So big thanks to them. The talk of the town. From time to time, I just get tired of being a woman. The cuts to the chase I've to put up with. And then, inattention, I tire of constant pretendings, charades, and the concealment of things. I grow tired of mirrors and endless looking on, stares and searches when the light's gone. I tire of claptraps and mist nets, of biding my time, and of secrets. I'm tired of how my face feels, and my fingertips, my hair, my waist, my very hips.
On your feet, the court clerk growls. Then in he sweeps, a glower of scowls, a scattergun of plummy vowels, a crude shiv, and the felons, a crude shiv and the felons' bowels. Why? He's wiser than 1,000 owls. He's 89 with cracking jowls, and my libido howls and howls and howls. I've got a judge crush. Jury duty just got fruity. Whisper it, me lad's a cutie. Sexy, never looked so snooty. Droopy beauty. I've got a judge crush. Those liver spots, they look so good. A rich dark brown like Christmas pud. The foreman nods and says, wood. We got a judge crush. Perched stiffly on that padded bench, he nods off to the evidence. Christ alive, that lawman's hench, lips quivering like a praying tench. He's ubermensch. I've got a judge crush. Take me where the crimes are filthy. That old geezer's guilty. Hear me plead, guilty, milky. I've got a judge crush. So I picture him in Judges Weekly, gavel pinced, half a feetly, wig between the legs, discreetly, truly, madly, judgy, deeply, meet me. I got a judge crush, swear me on the mills and boon, the Bailey's decked in gay festoons. That court report is not immune. He's typing like a piss baboon. Order, hashtag swoon, fly me to the moon. I've got a judge crush. Come, me lord, let's cut this short. Grab your black cap, clear the court, sentence me to la pete mort. You'll be glad you got caught. I've got a judge crush.
Being the spirit of water for Glen Tohi. When you come to a river or lake or pond, one you haven't met, you must meet its spirit. Place your hand into its belly, feel the energy, stroke its power, caress the life source. Let it run through your hands. Say a prayer. You must meet its spirit, and it will never steal you, was what she told us as children. I'm going to read the Navajo version of Meeting the Spirit of Water. Tjehol Twonaliniki, Twose Yihiki, Bedah Jagako, Inda Ahijil Tseko, Be Ina Ba Akwejne Zenle, Twon Sekes Be Holo, Be Ina Ba Akwejne Zengo, Ina At Ege, Hulbeho Zenle, Twopi Injedelni, Sodazen Be Ajani, Be Ina Bil Ahijil Tsel, Okodo Nidano Ilta, Alchiniaje Danidlene Da, Di Beta Nihit Nestra.
Moths, ghosts. My house is full of them. I live with waves of darkness, but their lives roar enormous through my rooms, hung on walls, locked in newspaper, stuffed in bookcases, tied with string, leaking from wounded suitcases. It rained last night, and the dead came down with the drops, to gather where the land is flat and wind-blown. The quiet stores their smiles. I press my finger where theirs have been, thread words to tumble them back, all talking, arguing,
What I was thinking of when I wrote it was one of those tracking shots where there are no cuts. So a bit like Joe Wright's Dunkirk scene in Atonement, where the camera just moves along with the actions. Poems like the one Triangulation that I've just read, they're quite fragmented on the page, and they're probably a bit more difficult for the reader to relate to. They've got a lot of white space, and they're quite interested in what's going on off frame as well as what's going on in frame, so in the world of the poem. So they're a bit more kind of art house, fragmented, experimental, expecting the reader to do quite a lot of work. And then there are other poems where the stanza breaks kind of work like scene breaks. So the action's kind of moving on. It might be in time, it might be the idea, and it acts as like a jump cut or even a bridging shot. And the one I'm going to read in Heaven is in couplets on the page. So you could say that looks a bit like a film strip, and it's sort of interrupted cuts which sort of show the juxtapositions between different scenes. A kind of omniscient camera that can move even up to heaven at one point.
What an amazing reel. It makes me feel really proud that we've been part of all these fantastic events, and it's such a wide variety, and between us and the team we managed to achieve so much, so I'm really proud of that.
Well, you don't realise quite how much until you look back on it, do
Not
you?
at all. You have one of these montages, and it's like if you're watching a TV series and they do a montage, it makes you really emotional. It's like watching our own montage of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
It also shows you the work you've done throughout the year. It's a really nice way to be able to say, like, that was 2021, that's what I did there and then. It's very nice. But I wanted to ask Florrie, have you got a favourite event from all of those?
Well, I have, again, it's the same thing, not wanting to choose a favourite. I do have some people that I do have to mention. Caroline Bird, when we had her on home stage, was an absolutely fantastic day of recording. We went and recorded her in her home, and I just, someone commented on that being the very definition of home stage, and I was like, we've reached our peak. This is fantastic. But she's just an amazing poet. She's a fantastic educator, and she knows exactly what to say to get you enthusiastic about poetry. Her writing is so imaginative and really charming in places as well. She was a fantastic guest to have on, and I was so pleased to be able to welcome her to home stage. You'll have seen again all the highlights from the year, but there was the World Poetry Day back in March. There was one person again from that I did want to mention, which was Sophie Herxheimer, who is she writes really interesting poetry. It's in English, which is English in a German sort of dialect.
Wait, what was it? Hinglish, did you say?
English. It's spelled Inklisch, I think. She's like she made it up. It's because she wrote about her grandparents who came from Germany, I think during World War II. And so it was all about that experience, and listening to her perform it with this accent, it was so inventive. And to have named it as well, she was a brilliant poet. But I mean, everyone who I've worked with the past year definitely deserves a shout out. I mean, Luke Wright and Sally Festing and Peter Wallace, the other World Poetry Day guests, Katrina Niklerkin and Laura Tohi, who is the Navajo Nation Poet Laureate. They've all been fantastic, I have to say.
Amazing. That is amazing. And it's like, just because you're shouting one person out does not detract from the other. Because I was trying to think about my favourites, and it was like I was listing them all and I can't necessarily choose any. I feel like Frankie Armstrong was a huge highlight for me, just because all through studying, her name was everywhere. I was listening to her music, and it was like when I finally got to meet her and talk to her, I was like, I am the luckiest person
Yeah.
alive, being able to like talk to this legend who's been there working with Peggy Seeger, Ewan McCall, and everything. I mean, we even got an appearance from Peggy Seeger in the interview, which was just unbelievable. It was like when I first got an email from Peggy, I was like, oh my God. And I was telling my sister, we couldn't believe that I'd made it. I got an email from Peggy Seeger, which kind of
Ultimate
also
fangirling.
literally, it's been tough to like remain calm in a lot of these situations. A bit like Eliza Carthy going to her house, like you said, the epitome of home stage. And I walked in, and not only was I in Eliza Carthy's house, but Martin Carthy just walked out the kitchen and was like, hello. I was like, this is crazy. How am I in this situation? It was just amazing. And then to learn about all of their impacts on the folk scene and to discuss it with them, it was just fantastic. But then I can't just say it's them, because Martin Simpson last month, he was just incredible, such an interesting and friendly guy. He was really great. And then Bruce Lindsay, for being just really knowledgeable and kind of bringing this historic insight into folk music that you don't get to hear every day. And there's just so much more. I just can't even go into it. I feel like I should mention something that wasn't on the highlight reel, though, and that is the Folk Shanty and Beer Festival that we had on the 31st of July and 1st of August. Florrie, you were there.
I was there.
It was
a great weekend. I loved it so much.
It was so fun. We had the weather, and Martin Carthy headlined, and it was just like, it was so nice to finally be back out away from COVID. We thought, obviously, it's back again. Hello. But it was nice to kind of see everyone and be in this community and stuff.
Yeah. To see all of the efforts from the past year come into one place, and so many past Tuesday Folk People guests there, and just seeing it all in the flesh in person. It was a fantastic weekend. There were I think there was a couple of like spoken word poets there as well, which was really nice. But it was gorgeous. It was sunny. There was beer. There was loads of food. It was amazing.
So, Florrie, was there anything else that wasn't on the reel that you want to mention?
Just one thing, which I do think is worth mentioning. It was National Poetry Day on the 7th of October, I think. And I put the word out to say, we want your poems, send your poems into us. And we had so many fantastic pieces of writing coming in from, our viewers, everyone who's part of the Homestage community. I put them up on the Homestage website. They're all still there for you to go and have a read through, along with all of the poems by all of our Zoom discussion group attendees. They always go up on the website too. But I would encourage you all to go and have a look. It's fantastic. They're poems on the topic of choice, which was the National Poetry Day theme for this year. And it was one of those moments where I was just so pleased to see the community coming together, seeing how many people wanted to take part in poetry at Homestage.
Yeah.
So that was worth mentioning, I think.
Lovely. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you a really tough question.
God.
What was your overall highlight of the year of working in the poetry side of things at Homestage, or running the poetry side of things? What was your highlight of that?
Well, this touches on briefly what I mentioned in the one-off poetry events highlights, which was the first in-person event that I did for poetry was with Luke Wright. This was at the Blakeney Harbour Rooms, and I remember it all being quite touch and go actually because of COVID. All of the guidelines kept changing, and we sort of at times I wasn't sure like how it would go ahead. It did go ahead, and I just remember the whole time feeling so elated that I was in a room full of other people who were appreciating the poetry. I could see them laughing because Luke's writing is hysterical. He's so funny and so I'll let you all make your minds up if you've seen him perform, but he's a real character. And it was a really, really special night actually, watching Luke perform on stage and knowing that we were streaming it out to everyone at home too, as we do with all of our content. That was, again, I can't say my favourite because everything has been amazing, but definitely one of the best moments of the year for me.
And I have to say with that, I watched that one online, And I think it was the first time that we'd been able to properly witness Mark and Paul's skill at an in-person event, and I was absolutely blown away by how amazing quality it was. And I think that for Homestage as a company, it was a big highlight, that particular event, because you kind of led that we're going to do in-person events now, and it was really good. And I remember watching it and just being like, wow, this is great.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Maddy. And how about you? What is your 2021 Homestage highlight?
It's really tough because, as I said, I got to meet so many amazing people that have been influential to me throughout my life. I didn't even mention Susan Gibson, who wrote the song for Wide Open Spaces for the Dixie Chicks, who was my favourite band growing up. So that was like another fangirl thing.
Yeah.
But I think my overall favourite was probably when I went to Manchester Folk Festival in October. And not only was it great because I was immersed with all of these other folkies who I'd only ever met online or I'd interacted on social media with. So I was surrounded by them, but also there were so many of our previous acts, and future acts. So I got to meet Bella Gaffney in person, the brothers Gillespie, Chris Fox was there. It was literally just like the nicest feeling to see them in person in this kind of social situation, not only watch them perform, but we'd have some drinks afterwards. And it felt like, even though we'd never seen each other in person before, you had that friendship and connection because of the music and because of the interviews. And I mean, it didn't stop there. One of, actually a previous Tuesday Folk People guest, Jeff Wilson, he turned up, and he also comes to our folk club on every other Sunday. And he brought me a cake. And it was just nice because I've seen Jeff throughout the year, and he runs our ukulele string along workshop club as well. And so it was like, we've spoken so much and we've never seen each other in person. And then he turned up, and it kind of makes you a bit emotional, finally meeting these people. So yeah, I hope in 2022 we get more opportunities like that to meet these people that we've interacted with for the year. It's just great.
And I do think that is the gem of all of this is, you've had these legendary folk acts. I've had, award-winning poets. We've both, had that end of the scale. And we also have people who just love folk music and love poetry and want to be part of the community, and being able to reach people of all parts of that spectrum and see them in person finally is an absolute highlight. But what you were saying, 2022, we have got plenty of stuff on the horizon in 2022. I mean, where do we even begin? We have our folk music, poetry and the environment program, which if you haven't heard about it yet at home, then where have you been? We've been singing it from the rooftops. So we're doing a weekly show where we're showcasing everyone's folk music and poetry that addresses the climate crisis. We are still accepting submissions, so get yours in as soon as you can for it to be aired online for everybody to see.
None of these events move us much. Sighing, what can we do?
I sunk the dirty depths with the weight of regret. I sought sickening heights in manic flight.
And so it happened. How they lived, gnawing away at how they could, their need for ever more begetting matricidal embryos. Result, casual unrest, ache, war. Then timbers which had long withstood decay and rot began to give, and then succumbed.
I am sacred, I am holy, spring and brook and river. I am older than the land, life taker and life giver. Constantly I change.
So now we stand with placards high, and if you cannot care to try, we'll still not sleep though waters rise, both here and far away.
Me
Here on earth, life is hanging by a thread. We're hanging by a thread.
Because our leaders don't care about your children's future, but you'll vote on men again, cause it just seems to suit you. It's a race against time to reverse the change. If we want humanity to remain, it's not too late to change the way we live. We can't wait, one world is all there is. It's not too late to change the way we live. We gotta get it together. Help to make this planet better.
So that was just a brief selection of what we've got, a summary of some of the things that we've been sent in. We have so many more. Poets and musicians across the country have sent in their stuff. Actually, across the world, we've had people from different countries sending things in. So what we're asking is for you to write your own poem, write your own folk song, and send it in to us. And we want you to talk about how you feel about the climate crisis, get your voice heard, maybe make a change, depending on what you're after. And we want you to use the tool of creativity because it's such a powerful tool. And we're willing to give you this platform. We want to help you get your voice out there.
And music and poetry have historically been used for addressing these sorts of social issues, and they have such a revolutionary force. I mean, we've had on Meet the Poet some environmentalist guests. There was Samantha Walton last month who, studies eco-poetics, writes eco-poetry, and she was saying that without poetry, she doesn't think she'd have the space to gestate and come up with new ideas and think about new ways of living and interacting with the world around us, because poetry, and it's the same for music, is obviously such a creative pursuit. It can help you reconsider the way that you live. There's also an upcoming guest on Meet the Poet called Emily Critchley, who also writes a lot of environmental poetry and said something beautiful in our recording the other day. She was talking about how forests, they can be our hospitals and they can be our schools, and we have so much to learn from and gain from the world around us. And you can encapsulate that in poetry. You can begin to weave our worlds with the natural world. And it is absolutely the same with folk music. I mean, there have been revolutions instigated by folk music.
The revivals, absolutely. Like Second Folk Revival, all these folk songs, they incurred social change. And I think that's something that we can definitely do.
And if you do want to take part in the programme, we do have a prize for a winner. We'll have a folk winner and we'll have a poetry winner. Each one will get £500, as well as the same money will be donated by us to an environmental charity of your choice, which is very much worth bearing in mind. I think it's quite a good incentive. And we will also be planting a tree for every entry that we receive. So do get involved. There is really a lot in it for you, but also for making a change for the world around us.
Absolutely. And keep your eyes peeled for me and Florrie walking around with trees on our back, lugging them around, planting them everywhere.
We will be planting them specifically ourselves.
Yeah, we'll see about that. So please do send anything in. If you do want to send it in, you send it directly to Florrie and myself. So if you have a folk music submission, send it to me, which is maddy@home-stage.co.uk. And that's Maddy with a Y, not an IE. And if you want to send a poetry submission, send it to florrie@home-stage.co.uk. And that's Florrie with an IE, not a Y.
Just to confuse you. God, why are we like this?
But that isn't all we're doing next year. I mean, that's just a folk music and poetry collaboration, which is actually one of our first things that we are doing. So I'm really excited to be able to work directly with Florrie on this. But Florrie, do you want to say some of the other things that you've got coming up in 2022?
Yes, well, I mean, there is also another collaboration that is on the horizon, which is the songwriting collaboration. We're going to be setting up a new space for musicians and lyricists or poets to get together and create a song, because, you know, some people have the words, some people have the music, not everyone has both. So it will be a great opportunity for you to try your hand at actually making a song. So that is one thing that we've got coming up. Also, on the poetry side of things, we have our Poetry in the Armed Forces new Zoom groups will be reconvening in January. We've had a few of these this year so far, where we've welcomed anyone in and associated with the armed forces to just come along and to essentially meet other people who are part of the community, but using poetry to sort of get kickstarting those conversations that, you know, often get neglected and overlooked. These are people who have real stories to tell and often need some support. And this is what we want to offer with these groups: is a space for these people to get together and use the creative outlet of poetry to connect with other people, and in the same way as with the environment, you know, begin to sort of reconsider how you interact with the world around you, and you can use poetry to connect with your peers. So that is another regular Zoom group that we will be hosting in 2022. Keep an eye out for more details. And what about you, Maddy? You've got things coming up too, haven't you?
Yes, we have lots of things in motion. There are things I can't go into too much detail about, so more information will be released everywhere, social media, our website. Just make sure if you wanna learn about anything, sign up to mailing lists or follow us on social media, any of that sort of stuff. But basically, we have some events with big artists. So, for example, Jackie Oates, who was just on our Christmas special, she's an English traditional singer and fiddle player. We are looking to do another event similar to the Eliza Carthy event, which is an intimate interview and discussion with exclusive performances. We're also looking to do throughout the year other workshops similar to Martin Carthy's. Now, I can't say the artists' names or anything like that, but if you're interested in developing your skills or asking the big names who are yet to be released questions, then just keep an eye out and come along to our workshops. We're also potentially looking at doing a tour in 2022 of Tuesday Folk People artists. More on that to be released later. And a folk festival. Well, maybe folk and poetry festival. We'll see. More on that as well. So everything's brief. I'm just letting you know so that you can get a feel for what 2022 is going to look like, but not the finalised details yet. Keep an eye out for that. And with regard to Tuesday Folk People, we've got loads more artists in the running. I'll give you an idea of just a small sample. So our first one in January is The Longest Johns. You may have heard of the Weller Man over lockdown, all over TikTok. It's everywhere. It's that Weller Man shanty song. So they are one of the instigators of that craze, and they do all sorts of other shanty stuff. I know.
Wow.
We've also got Lizzie Hardingham, a new singer-songwriter. She's amazing. We've got Bird in the Belly, a Brighton-based band who actually worked with Frankie Armstrong. So there's little connections there. And finally, I will just tell you about our next one, which is Hellion. And they are a Leeds-based new ensemble who do traditional folk stuff. They do tunes, they do songs, all sorts. So there's loads of different things coming up. And yeah, as I said, I would implore you to sign up to our mailing list or keep checking out our social media and website for any updates, because there is a lot coming in 2022.
And I, of course, would say exactly the same with the poetry mailing list as well. I didn't mention, actually, our upcoming Meet the Poet guests. In January, we're featuring, I mentioned her earlier, we're featuring Emily Critchley alongside Astrid Alban. They have a really fascinating Meet the Poet that discusses poetry on ideas of the home and belonging or not belonging. It's a really, really interesting event. And then we also have Sue Hubbard, who is an art critic and a broadcaster and a novelist, as well as a poet, who writes beautifully about ideas of time and loss and traveling and journeying. I think her poetry is absolutely stunning. But yes, Meet the Poets coming up in January. Do keep an eye out. And as Maddy said, sign up to our mailing lists. You can follow us on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter. And yes, just keep an eye out for everything Homestage related in the new year.
Yes. Oh, and we should probably mention what you briefly mentioned earlier, podcasts. So Mark has been doing loads of work on getting all of our content that you can see online, and he's looking to release that, or he's already started doing it, but we've got loads more coming up in 2022. So you can just listen to it no matter where you are, what you're doing. It can just be easily accessible. So it's just another way for you to hear some of the interviews that we've been doing. We also have some people who you actually haven't heard or seen on these things. John Bowden. No more details there. But there's more podcasts coming, so just keep an eye on that. That's on Spotify. Is it Apple Music?
And Amazon.
And Amazon, yeah. There's so many different podcast places, I just lose track. So is there anything else, Florrie, that we have coming up that we can release?
I think that's everything. I think that is everything that we have planned for now, for the new year.
For now.
But this has been absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad we have finally been on screen together, had a good discussion about our events and our guests and our work. And it's interesting. You know, we're two sort of presenters presenting together.
I know. And the thing is, a lot of people get us mixed up because we're both young with brown hair, and a lot of people just get our names wrong, including our own team. They get us mixed up quite a bit.
Yes.
So
not
I don't
naming
know.
names, but yes,
they can
it does
compare
happen.
us.
Yeah.
You see us online for the first time together. It's been very nice, Florrie. We've enjoyed it. We should do it more.
We should. We absolutely should. But everyone at home, I hope you've had a lovely Christmas. We also wish you a happy and healthy new year, and we'll be catching up with you very soon in 2022. So take care and goodbye from us.
Goodbye.